Okay. And I'm going to record. Hello, and welcome to the IPFS weekly call, where we get to learn about all the exciting projects that are happening in the IPFS community. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. One, please add your name to the agenda notes that Terry helpfully put in the chat. And speaking of Terry, thank you, Terry, for taking notes for today. Terry is our hero. And second announcement, so in North America, you guys already had daylight savings time. So the IPFS weekly call, if you're in North America, it'll still be the same time. But if you are in Europe, then the time will be an hour earlier. So UTC time will be 16 p.m. and like CET would be 17 p.m. or 5 p.m. And that will only be for 2 weeks. As of, I think, the last day of March, we'll go back to regular schedule where the calls will start at 17 UTC and it'll still stay the regular time for North America. Excellent. So without further ado, we will introduce our guest for today, who is Brian Hoffman. Brian Hoffman is the CEO of OpenBazaar, and OpenBazaar is a true peer-to-peer decentralized market. And so with that, Brian, thank you for coming. So small clap. And so how we do this is we have a presentation. So Brian will present, and then we'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. So let us begin with Brian.
Hi, everybody. I'll just go ahead and share my screen since my slides talk for themselves, I guess. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen yet? Or
not yet.
Oh, you know what?
So share is below.
I'm not sharing the right thing. Okay.
Okay.
All right, where is my slides? I have too many windows open, apparently. I'll just share the whole desktop. Why not? Let's do it. Okay. Can you see now?
Also see it. Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so I mean, I don't know exactly what you guys would like to know about it, but I just put some slides together of things that I thought were interesting about what we're doing with IPFS and how maybe we're a little different than some of the other projects that are using IPFS. And then I also took an opportunity to throw in a few gripes just to give you guys some fodder for improving later. And if you guys have any questions, you know, obviously, I think you take some at the end, and I'd love to answer any that you have. So just a quick background. My background is engineering. Even though I'm the CEO at OB1, it kind of got it by default. I was our original programmer for the software, doing everything. And now, unfortunately, for me and for the people that are actually good programmers, that's not the case as much. But my background was government and security consulting, doing encrypted messaging and identity management and things like that for the Department of Defense, classified agencies, things like that. You got a little bit of an overview of what OpenBazaar was just there in my introduction, but it's essentially an open source project. It started in 2014. We're working on building a protocol and software for e-commerce that is as decentralized as possible. And it uses cryptocurrencies as the only medium of exchange. And it originated out of a hackathon idea called Dark Market, which was basically an idea to figure out how to build a decentralized Silk Road to create a free and open marketplace for the world. Just a quick overview of kind of where OpenBazaar is today. You know, it's a dApp technically, not an Ethereum dApp, but it's a dApp in our minds. And you know, even before the term dApp existed, we currently get about 400 to 600 new OpenBazaar nodes on our network daily. We've had almost 160,000 nodes created on the network since our second version, which was the end of 2007. And just for clarification, a node is someone who's installed and run the OpenBazaar software, which runs IPFS underneath. So technically, those are also IPFS nodes. We get tens of thousands of searches for products and services each day. And we have over 10,000 visitors to OpenBazaar properties daily, which is our website, and our .com, which is utilizes an IPFS gateway to serve up dynamic content if you're browsing from the web, as well as hitting our search services. So here's a quick timeline of OpenBazaar. We started back in 2014. Wasn't based on anything close to IPFS at that time. It actually started out as a couple 0MQ nodes talking to each other. It was not very scalable, and we quickly changed that network, created a 1.0. But where IPFS enters the conversation was probably late 2016 when we decided to rewrite the entire thing on top of libp2p and IPFS, and we launched that towards the end of 2017. And there's a couple other notable things on here. The openbazaar.com went live early last year, which pretty much just is a read-only version of our network. It just uses our gateway, our IPFS gateway, to serve up content so that people can search and browse the marketplace without downloading the software. And then if they want to purchase something, they can download our app and do so in the app. And on the horizon, we have something called Haven, which is our mobile version of OpenBazaar. And then later, we're going to be moving towards a web-based OpenBazaar, which is kind of our holy grail that we'd like to use JS IPFS for at some point. So OpenBazaar version 1, we built it in Python. We rolled our own peer-to-peer protocol. So it was a very, very basic UDP-based network that we built. We extended it to be a reliable UDP so that we could punch through firewalls and get through home routers as best we could. It was very unreliable. It wasn't very flexible. It was definitely one of the biggest problematic pieces of our first architecture. It also required users to be online in order to buy and sell things. We didn't really have any kind of methodology for storing content in the DHT in any kind of reliable way. And it was just it's not a great experience, especially for merchants who wanted to come online and offer up something to sell, and then they would close the app, and then their product would not be available to purchase because they weren't on the network. So that was obviously something we wanted to fix. And then we also had a lot of requests for implementing anonymity services, either I2P or Tor. And the way that our network was so homegrown, it wasn't conducive to us integrating any kind of Tor. So that was like a big knock on what we were doing as well. And so we decided to scrap that after looking at some alternatives and coming across IPFS. So version 2, we were looking at a couple alternatives to our own peer-to-peer networking, things like mainline DHT and using the BitTorrent network, and some others, MadeSafe and a few others. But ultimately, we wanted to use BTCD, which was a Bitcoin wallet stack. It was written in Go. IPFS was written in Go. We felt like that was a pretty strong language for building cross-platform software. And so we just decided to make the jump from Python to Go and adopt IPFS. It made sense. So we ended up rewriting all of the marketplace logic in Go and incorporating IPFS and libp2p for our data storage layer and networking. We actually created our own onion transport and contributed that back to you guys. so people could use that as one of the transport options for libp2p. And then we built something kind of clever on top of IPFS using an offline messaging layer. So that allowed us to do two things for OpenBazaar. One, when people wanted to create listings or make purchases from storefronts, they can store the orders temporarily within the network using our offline messaging layer. And also, if they wanted to send chat messages to each other, they could do that in an offline way so that the recipients didn't need to be online all the time. When they came back online, they would retrieve all the messages they had missed from IPFS and keep going. And then we also adopted IPNS for our naming system. So prior to that, we kind of had peer IDs, or our version of peer IDs, and we mapped them to like block stack IDs and a couple other things in our first version. It was kind of clunky. So we just kind of moved to IPNS. And one thing that we're hoping in the future is that we'll allow people to map some other things to the IPNS addresses, because they're a little bit cumbersome, obviously, to remember or type. So what makes our network a little bit different than the standard IPFS network? Well, for one thing, we use a fork of the IPFS network. So early on, when we were looking at IPFS and we wanted to implement the offline storage concept, we knew that one day was probably not going to cut it in terms of storing things there for offline support. That meant that, obviously that stuff was going to get expunged quicker than we wanted. And so that was one of the main impetuses for modifying the standard IPFS network. I've actually spoken to several other people that are looking to build on IPFS that have different needs in that respect. So I know I spoke with one when I was in Germany last week, and we discussed the ability to maybe flexibly be able to change that. That would be great. We also wanted to make sure that our network was super reliable and quickly accessed. So we built some custom indexers that crawl the entire network. We can actually crawl our entire OpenBazaar network in a couple minutes when we do so, and we put it into Elasticsearch and you build a search engine off of that, which allows us to do all kinds of different manipulation of that data and query what's available on the network at any given time and provide caching. So we have a search endpoint. And you can search for listings, search for users, search for all kinds of different stuff. And then we also just recently, we also create IPNS indexes so that you don't have to make IPFS crawls if you don't want to get IPNS records resolved. And that's something we built in particular for our mobile app, which we're okay with being slightly more centralized than our OpenBazaar desktop nodes. And then we have gateways, which we've kind of modified to be our super nodes. And so what we do is we make sure that our nodes, when they publish any kind of data to IPFS, that we automatically send it to our super nodes as well, so that they will be seeding the content from the get-go. So that's something that we maintain to make sure that all the content is available. This is kind of a very high-level diagram of what's kind of occurring in our architecture. So we have on the left side of the line, I can't point to it for you, but you can see it. We have users using OpenBazaar, and they're talking through a front-end client, whether that's the mobile app or the desktop app. And then we have a whole architecture over there that talks to the swarm. We have our seed nodes, we have our indexers, we have our search, we have a couple other items in there. And also we have a testnet that's available that you can connect to. And then behind that, we have a bunch of VPS backends. We're currently moving all of our stuff to Amazon, but we're also in DigitalOcean. This is a very fun diagram of how complex our search architecture is. So this is our architecture for what we use to crawl the network and actually provide gateways, services, and search. So you can see we have a test net and we have a main net, and yeah, it's extremely reliable, and we have to have it up all the time. So, how are we using IPFS within the app? Like, what are users experiencing? So, on this screen, what you're seeing is our kind of our profile view, our storefront view for users within the desktop app. People access their storefronts through an OB address, which is basically, if you look closely, you can see it's a OB:// and then the IPNS name / a path that we've created as custom for OpenBazaar. That's how they get to their stores. This is so that we can have a static address to get to, just like you would a website, and we serve up the content via IPFS. So all the images you're seeing, everything other than like the display template, is all getting served up through IPFS through hashes. So what will happen is when you access the store, you'll pull down their profile JSON from IPFS, and within that, it has a bunch of hashes of different content for the images and all that stuff, and it goes out and retrieves that in real time and pulls that into the view. We've kind of bastardized the IPFS data directory a little bit. If you look at a normal IPFS directory, you only see about, I think, maybe 6 of those items in there. For us, we've added logging. We have an outbox folder, which is where we store our offline messaging that I spoke about earlier. If they're using Tor, then we set up a hidden service for them and keep their keys in there. And we also have to keep track of which version of OpenBazaar they're on, so that we can migrate them up and down when they upgrade. And then also in the root folder that we pin to IPFS, that's where all their information about their OpenBazaar store is. So you can see a profile JSON, followers, any followers are in the JSON. They have listings, posts, which is like social posts, like you can do like Twitter posts or blog posts within there, different things. So what happens when people update their profile within our app? Well, behind the scenes, in terms of IPFS, the user will save their profile. Our OB server pushes the data to those seed nodes that I talked about, the ones that are always available. It basically sends them a command, a special command, and those gateways are programmed to understand that and know that they need to request the data back from the publishing node, and then they seed it that way. So we kind of force them to access our content on demand, and then they become seeders of our content. And then we move on to publish to IPNS. And then eventually, since it's in IPNS, our gateways index that content and make it accessible there. So a couple things to note, things that we've observed, is that one, our IPNS publishes are pretty slow. And this is something we struggle with a lot. And I don't know if this is really an anomaly. I think it's just kind of the nature of the beast here right now, but our publishes actually take between 1 and 6 minutes, mostly between 1 and 2 minutes. Retrieving IPFS content, though, is super fast, and we're actually looking to implement something within our app to do smart. So I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we now have our crawler indexing the IPNS publishing, and it does that so that we don't have to make IPNS calls all the time for certain content. And so we request the data via IPFS first, and then in the background, we kind of look at IPNS to see if that content needs to be refreshed, and then we do that. If it does need to be updated, we kind of refresh the view later so that the UX is much better. And then we're also looking at alternative tiered routing options so that we're not completely reliant on the DHT. We want to have another option to maybe have like a HTTP endpoint where we can request data quicker than going through the DHT. Something we're currently building. Some of our future plans, we really would like to get off of a fork. Every time IPFS updates, we have to go through a real lengthy rebase and testing process so that we can get all the goodies from the new version. And we have an issue on GitHub that we've shared with the team, with your team, to track what we need to do to get off that fork. And it's kind of in the weeds. I won't really go into that right now, but if you're interested, I'd be glad to share that link. But that would allow us to, upgrade much more quickly. I think we were on point 4, point 15, like for, we've been on that until like maybe, actually we haven't even released point 4, point 18, which is what we're rebasing right now. So it's been a long, long time, and 19 is already out. So it's getting more difficult. So one new thing that I thought it would be interesting to share with you guys is, and this app is not out yet. We're in the final stages of getting this done, and so we can get it released. Is our mobile app called Haven, and it actually runs the exact same code as the desktop on the device. So it's a complete full IPFS node on mobile device. We cross compile IPFS and OpenBazaar into a ARM binary, and we run it on the device just like we do on the desktop. And so there's no need for having, it's not talking to a centralized server or anything. It's actually connecting to the peer-to-peer network directly through mobile. These are kind of the 4 pivotal areas that we want to accomplish with the mobile app, which is like we're allowing people to shop, to do secure encrypted chat. They have a multi-currency wallet, and then they now will have social posts. So it's like a social network built on top of IPFS. So you can like and post and start conversation threads on the content. It's basically like a decentralized Twitter built into the app. Uses IPFS behind the scenes for that. So what are some of the things that we've found running IPFS on the mobile device? One, mobile devices have no inbound connections. And so we really, really, really want to upgrade to 0.4, 0.18, and hopefully 0.4, 0.19, so that we can take advantage of circuit relays and relaying, so that nodes can connect to each other. Right now, what happens is like every communication is like an offline message. So we have to we can't connect to a node because they don't take inbound connections, and then we have to publish to the DHT as an offline message, and then that other node has to pull from the DHT to find out if it has a message. So if you're chatting with somebody, it's like very high latency. It's not good. Circuit relay, with our testing of the rebase, it's like instant. It's like real time. And it's really, really great. So we want to move to that as soon as possible. Resource usage, obviously it's on a mobile device. So, we're running desktop code on the mobile device, and we're working to optimize that better. But bootstrapping and publishing on the device is really slow, and it's not a great user experience right now. So we're trying to figure out what we're going to do about that. And we'd really like to move to JS IPFS at some point. We're already starting to build out our web version of OpenBazaar, and at some point when we've done that and completed that, we hope to roll that into the mobile app and kind of replace and deprecate the Golang version. We think that would be much more efficient. So I don't really have anything else to talk about. I mean, there's probably a lot of questions you maybe have, or there's probably a lot more to talk about, but I don't want to talk for an hour here for you guys. Just thought I'd give you some initial thoughts of our experience with it. And we've been working with it for years now. So we really, really love the software. We're really, really happy to be partnering with you guys and using you guys. And so, if there's anything we can do to help you guys or vice versa, we're definitely down with that. And thanks.
Yay. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much, Brian. Let's get to questions. If you have a question, if you could please put it into the chat, that would be great, and I'll read it out loud. So first question from Johnny Crunch. Are you compiling Go to ARM?
Yes. Yeah, we use Xgo. And so basically when we finish a release, we tag it, and we have our continuous integration server basically cross compiles it into all those binaries and it automatically dumps it into GitHub. And so that's how we do it.
And then are you wrapping that at all with other software?
Yeah. So on iOS, we wrap it and create like a bridge. And on Android, I believe it's similar concept. But yeah, we create a bridge library so that we can talk to the server daemon through iOS.
Yeah, and what's the wrapping?
I'm not sure. I'm not the one who wrote it. I might have to get that for you. I forget.
That's fine.
I believe it's the same one that Ethereum uses for their daemon, if you're familiar with that. But I can share it.
Cool.
Next question from Alan Shaw. What are the main blockers stopping you from moving to using JS IPFS?
I mean, first and foremost, it's just that we haven't really tested it that thoroughly. We have some initial experiments that we've done with it. We were very heavily reliant on IPNS and DHT, and that's something that's been pretty new to JS IPFS. I think it just recently got merged, and so we're trying to test that out. We've had some challenges with it, getting it to work, at least in the context that we're using it. But you know, it's a very fluid thing. We like really just started heavily working on it.
Next question for Dean. Would a pub sub based on IPNS be sufficient, or do you require offline DHT support?
Well, one of the issues that we've had with PubSub is that you have to be subscribed to it to get the calls. And the way that our users use IPNS is they're accessing a lot of nodes that they'd never have known about. So that first contact is always slow no matter what, but then the subsequent IPNS publishes are like real time. So, I mean, imagine you're browsing through the store, like every storefront you're clicking to look at is a new IPNS resolution, and that's just slow. So it doesn't necessarily help us as much as it would seem.
Another question from Johnny Crunch regarding how to handle the authenticity of goods.
Yeah, so for instance, I just searched for Scotch. So there's a 25-year-old Macallan Scotch that actually looks really good on OpenBazaar. But the challenge is, like, are you helping or aiding any of the software for the certifying the authenticity into those, or are you relying totally on the vendors? To be honest.
Yeah, so we are relying on the vendors. We have implemented a program called the Verified Moderators Program. So in this case, what happens is, you know, in OpenBazaar in general, the way it works is there's three parties. There's the buyer and the seller, and then there's a dispute resolution person called a moderator. And so we use like an escrow account. So if you buy something from someone, you put your cryptocurrency into the escrow account, and then the merchant ships the good. And when you're happy and satisfied, you release the funds to the merchant, and you know, that's it. If there's a problem, a third person can step in and help, you know, deal with the dispute. So in terms of like authenticity, the likelihood would be that you would get the Scotch and you'd be like, this is not right. And you would file a dispute, and then you guys would have to hash it out. Now, the question that arises from that is like, okay, now can you trust the moderator? Can you trust the dispute person? And so we've opened up a verified moderators program where we do a little bit of higher level of vetting of those people. So OB1 does kind of work with those folks to like help them mediate those disputes if possible, but only for a small amount of the moderators. And you're not forced to use that. It's just the added value program. But we generally try to stay away from the you know, hand holding any of the transactions because it's open, and you know, we just don't want to expose ourselves to legal liability at this point. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's still not a perfect path, and we have a lot of the similar issues that existing marketplaces have.
We are going to go slightly over, so I will read the last two questions, but we are at time. So if you have another meeting, just letting you know that we are going to go over today. Adine, have you considered using DIDs for social identifiers?
DIDs?
DIDs for social identifiers.
No, we haven't not that one in particular. We've got like a library we did where you can publish to DNS, so you could use DNS names to resolve your storefront. You're like if you have brianstore.com already, you can put a TXT record in your DNS, and you can use that. We also still support block stack IDs and ENS, but we haven't looked into DID. I'm not familiar with that one.
And final question from Molly. For the Tor and private browsing, what are the expectations of OB users in terms of privacy? Do you do anything special around IPFS to add more security guarantees?
Other than the onion transport, no. So basically, if you're running Tor browser, when you fire up OpenBazaar, it will detect that and ask you if you want to route through Tor before you connect to the network. And if you do, then it just routes it through that onion transport. But we don't do anything above and beyond that for privacy. So, I mean, just to be clear, we haven't done a security audit on OpenBazaar either. So we don't promise that that there aren't leaks. In fact, we probably have an open DNS leak, I think, at this point that we're trying to resolve. But we hope to do that in the coming year. It's a very expensive and cumbersome path. So we haven't done it until we're really happy with the state of the network. But yeah, in short, no, we haven't done anything above and beyond that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Brian, for sharing your time, your slides, and your insights. It was really good.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, sorry about the last time. I got the time zone right this time.
No worries. So speaking about time zone, thank you. For our European viewers, the next 2 weeks, the IPFS weekly call will be an hour early. The last week of March, I believe, is when we'll go back to the regular time. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.